First topic we're going to look at is soil. The first construction material we're going to look at is soil. We'll look at soil, the definition of soil, how soil is formed, and then we'll conclude with the structure of soil. Then afterwards, that's when I'll look at the individual tests conducted on soil. So, by definition, soil can be defined as a material consisting of rock particles, sand, silt, and clay, and is formed by the gradual disintegration or decomposition of rocks due to natural processes that include: number one, disintegration of rock that occurs due to stresses arising from expansion or contraction from temperature changes. During the day, it's warmer. The rock particles expand. During the night, it's cold. The rock particles contract. So because of that expansion and contraction, eventually the rock particles or the rock disintegrate. And during the process of disintegration, soil is formed. Number two, weathering and decomposition due to chemical changes that occur when water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide gradually combine with minerals within the rock formation, thus breaking it down to sand and clay. Weathering and what? Decomposition. So you find to it that these rocks are a complex of various chemical elements. So when those chemicals get into contact with water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, reactions take place. For instance, a rock with iron in it, in the presence of oxygen, gives you iron oxide. So once that iron oxide is formed, it leaves the rock formation, hence leading to voids being created within the rock structure. Those voids weaken up that rock. Eventually it disintegrates and the soil is formed. Thirdly, transportation of soil materials by wind, water, and ice to form different soil formations, such as those found in river deltas, sand dunes, or glacial deposits. In deserts, you have sand dunes. As winds are blowing, they carry those heavy rock particles which collide with one another, eventually breaking and forming the various soil structures which range from fine-grained to coarse-grained soils. Transportation in the rivers, as the water is moving at high speed and volume, it carries large rock particles which collide. Eventually you have sand being collected in river deltas. Moving ice is called a glacier. As water hardens in these cold regions, it solidifies. Now, when the temperatures changes, it begins to melt. As it melts, it starts moving due to gravity. As it is moving, it is colliding with the rock. Eventually, the rock disintegrates and soil eventually is what is formed. So, we said the various processes through which soil is formed are disintegration of rocks, weathering and decomposition, then thirdly, transportation, meaning temperature, rainfall, and drainage play important roles in the formation of soils in different climatic regions. Under different drainage regimes, different soils will be formed from the same original rock formation. And so, materials that have a large proportion of fine material in comparison to the proportion of coarser aggregate are commonly referred to as soils. While naturally occurring material, which are predominantly formed of coarser aggregate particles and which have considerable strength due to aggregate interlock with finer material occurring between the larger aggregate particles, are described as gravels. So here we have differentiated soils which are largely composed of fine-grained materials from gravels that are composed of coarse-grained particles.